Alright, it's the next day. Looks like these are for the spark plugs, I presume. So, I'm going to unclip that one from here. I think it was, yeah, it was mounted up here. And unclip this one from here. And then we'll try to get this hose pulled out of the way. Alright, and one more final hose runs up here to the front. So I'm going to take it loose from here, try to fish it up this way and get it pulled out of the way. After that, looks like I got to unbolt this ground wire. Probably take these coil packs off and should be ready to pull the valve cover after that. Alright, so I took those bolts out. You need an 8mm wrench. They're in there pretty tight, so I'm having to kind of ease them out. I guess while I'm here, you can notice there's a 1 on the left side, 2 on the right side. So cylinder 1 is the clutch side, cylinder 2 is the throttle side, which is the way it should be. Okay, got the valve cover off. Wound up having to drop my skid plate off, which I needed to do that anyways because part of this is an oil change and I needed to get access to that. So, but you got to be able to get to this, be able to take this plug out so that you can spin the motor. So I think you got to turn it counterclockwise. I've got to go double check the manual to make sure, but pretty sure you want to turn it counterclockwise. I'll let you know if that's wrong. I was just inside reading the service manual, and they're saying to, I guess it's a good thing they didn't come off, but whenever you're taking the valve cover assembly off, make sure these gaskets don't come loose. These go over the spark plugs, and you don't want them falling down in the engine. If they do, you need to figure out how to get them out of there. Okay, we got to take clutch housing off too. Not too thrilled about that. So it looks like you got some bolts around here. I'm gonna try not to take this hose off if I can help it. Maybe I can just take this thing off and let it dangle. Okay, just got this clutch housing off. One thing I noticed, this shaft here it's keyed. So whenever it goes back on there, it needs to line up with that dowel. I guess that's a dowel pin in there. Okay, looking at it some more, this is actually your clutch actuation rod. So the teeth on this have got to be on the same side as this mechanism in here. That way whenever you pull your clutch, it will force it to go in. So that's what that is. Alright, now that I got the clutch cover off, I need to take this plug out. There's a nut under here that I can use to spin the motor. It's a 10mm hex. Alright, just got it off. There is an O-ring, so whenever you take it out, make sure that comes out with it or that it's there. Okay, so according to the manual, they want the valve facing up. It's gonna be kind of tough to do one-handed. So cylinder 1 here. That might be, I'll have to look at it some more. But they want this facing up, and then you're going to take your measurement on the bottom side with a feeler gauge. I'm just using a 19mm on a 3/8 wrench to turn the motor. Okay, so from the service manual, the intake clearance is 0.10 to 0.15 millimeters, or right at 4/1000ths of an inch to 6/1000ths of an inch, roughly. And then the exhaust is 0.10 to 0.20 millimeters. So 4/1000ths of an inch on the small side up to 7/1000, almost 8/1000ths of an inch on the large side. So what I'm running into now is, I've got your standard feeler gauges like everybody else does, or pack of blades, but this pack, not very long, and you don't have a whole lot of access to get in there and see what you're doing. And back when I was a kid, I had one of my pawpaws, or what a lot of people call their grandfather or their grandpa. He was a mechanic, and he had a whole shelf in his one of his many toolboxes that was nothing but the single blades in one of these packs, where he just took them apart. And I never understood why he did that until now. Like, sometimes you gotta, I guess, be able to hold just the blade, not have to worry about finding somewhere to fit the handle, be able to get a good feel on things. So I got a little frustrated earlier, went back in the house, drank a couple beers, thought about it for a minute, and I replied to a Facebook comment, and I made that same comment about my pawpaw having that drawer of loose feeler gauges. And then I remembered several years ago I was at an antique store and I picked this up, and it's just been sitting in a drawer in one of my desks. It's not a very fine resolution set. I was looking on McMaster Car, and they probably have a better set that, for the tolerances you need for this bike, that would fit better. And I think they're a kitted set, kind of like this, but you could order it and then take it apart. I think having loose leaves would be the best way to get a good fit on this, or to get a good measurement on your valves. So that's just my opinion. I'm gonna feel around with these a little bit, see how it goes. I know I've measured, there's one of them that I could get to semi decently, and I think I measured it at like 0.0028 inches. So if that's the case, it's out of spec. So I need to get a good measurement on the rest of them. That way I can figure out which valves or which shims I need to order for each set. So looking at it, you have a set here: intake, exhaust. Let's see if I can do this where I can actually talk worth of shit. There is another set pretty much where I have my finger here. There's a set here. This is for the second cylinder. And then there's another set up under here. So you've got pretty much 8 different, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. You have 8 different measurements that you have to take on these. But from what I'm seeing, this this valve and the one in here, they are cammed the same way. So whenever you get this one into the right position, you can reach in and get the measurement for this one as well. Same thing on your intake valves up here. Whenever this one's cammed in the right position, this one is in the same position. Over here, when this one's in the right position, so is this one. Same way down here. So whenever you get each valve to the right position, you should be taking two separate measurements, and you need to differentiate how to record those. And also, you know, obviously I'm going to have to take both these camshafts out. These camshafts are completely different. This one is completely different from this one. So whenever we get to that point, we're going to have to keep track of which one is which, right? That way we don't put the wrong one back in. That would probably be very bad. All right, so from my experience so far, these are fine. Something like this is good for the exhaust valves, because you know, you can get right here, but they're not long enough for the intake valves. So I'm pretty sure they make like some, I think they call them like ruler style of these. So that might be a little bit better than, like, this seems to be working better from back here, maybe. But if I was going into this well prepared, I would probably want a longer, kind of a straight feeler gauge within the range of this valve adjustment. You know, something from probably 1/1000th of an inch up to 7 or 8 thousandths, maybe going by 1/2 thousandth at a time, or whatever that equals in metric. Probably like what is that? A millimeter is 0.0395, so 1/10 of a millimeter is 3 thousandths of an inch. So yeah, if you had something going by 1/2 thousandths or something like that, you know, 0.0015, 0.002, 0.0025, 0.003, that would probably give you the resolution you would want for checking this. All right, first kind of weird thing I've ran into. I've been using a 19 millimeter on this here, but you know what? An 18 millimeter fits fine. So got a few measurements so far. So this, the way I'm indicating this is the clutch side. So left side of the bike, throttle side, right side of the bike. This is the front of the bike. This is the rear of the bike. The exhaust valves are up here. They're towards the front of the bike because that's where your exhaust is. The intake is these valves back here, because that's where your intake is. I'm assuming. Makes sense to me. I mean, obviously there's your spark plug hole there, so it makes sense that air comes in on the intake side, which is this side of the cylinder. Where's my point? Yeah, which is this side, and then exhaust on that side. So that's kind of how I have my little graph here laid out. there are two there are two lobes on the cam for the intake, two lobes for the exhaust. They measured exactly the same on this side. This side they were a little different. They're about 1/1000th different. If you don't know how much 1/1000th of an inch is, a sheet of paper is 4/1000ths of an inch. So we're talking about a quarter of a sheet of paper is the difference between these two. So I'll probably, whenever I order shims, just order, I don't know, I'll probably see what shims are available and try to shoot for right in the middle of nominal if I can. I still got to measure the intake on cylinder 2, which is on the right side. The intake cylinder, I was having trouble getting with the with just the straight feelers that I got. The straight feelers work great for the exhaust, so glad I had them for that. And I said, this is my first time ever doing this, so even after I got the measurement with the other feeler pack, I even went back with this one just to double check, you know, because I don't know how long it's going to take to get shims from AF1. I want to make sure what I order is the right thing very first time. So if I can spend a little bit of time here double checking myself, just making sure my shit is good, then hopefully I only have to buy stuff one time. And also, so now that I'm getting all these different measurements, once, like, I know this stuff it's out of spec, so this is going to have to be fixed. So I'm going to have to tear, I'm going to have to take this whole cam train apart to be able to pull the intake cam and the outtake cam apart. And then I have to measure the shims that are in there before I know what is the right size of shim I have to order to be able to fix how much I'm out of spec. So that's where we're at now. I'm probably gonna finish this. I'm not gonna video me actually measuring the shim, or measuring the valve. That's pretty boring. But after today, I'm going to cover the bike back up for the night. I'm going to go in and edit last night's stuff and do a little bit more research, because I was hoping everything would be at least in spec, and then that way I wouldn't have to tear all this apart, because that's when it starts really getting to be some bullshit. And so you have to, so it has a timing chain here, right? But there's a whole sequence you have to go through where you have to pin this out. You have to pin the clutch basket down. Maybe not the clutch basket. Maybe it's this timing gear. Maybe that's what you got to pin out. But you have to pin this out. You have to pin this out. Then there's you have to take this is your cam chain tensioner here. You have to take it off. After you pin this out, after you get the chain off, then you have to make something to be able to take the thrush, or the valve thrust off of it, to be able to actually remove the cam and pretty much keep the motor in time. So that was the part that I was really worried about, like taking all the plastics and stuff off. the way this bike is built, that's nothing. But this bullshit, this could be, I mean, if I don't do it right, it could be bad. You know, I might have spent a lot of time getting this thing retimed and all that. Their manual doesn't seem bad, but it's kind of vague about certain things. Plus, they say that you got to have certain special tools, but I know there's one guy on like ADV Rider who's claimed to have done this with no special tools. The one thing that I'm kind of worried about is you got to have something to be able to, I think it's just this camshaft. You got to have something to be able to load it up. There's something that he had to make, and he took one picture of it. It's not a very good picture. I can't really tell what he's doing. But maybe once I actually start doing it, I can kind of get an idea. So, yeah. That's where we're at. Thanks for watching. Alright. So, got done with my measurements. And for those of y'all that, I'm not a pro mechanic. So if I get this wrong, whatever, leave it down here. Here's what I think is going on. Okay. So here's your valve. This is your camshaft here that's attached to, the valve is attached to the camshaft. So as the camshaft rotates this way, the valve rotates this way. As it comes down, it pushes on this this bucket, I think is what they call it, on this style of valve. On a bunch of other bikes, they call it like a tappet style valve. But in this case, it's a bucket style valve. So, what I just got done measuring is, because I was measuring the valve in this orientation, I was measuring this clearance here, if I spelled that right. I don't remember if this is clearance or if it's supposed to have an A here. But there needs to be a certain amount of room underneath the bottom of the valve and the top of the bucket, right? And if that measurement isn't within spec, then what we have to do is change this shim that's underneath the top of the bucket to get that within spec, right? Because this, the top of the bucket and the shim are attached to the valve guide rod, maybe that's what it's called. So what measurements did I come up with? Cylinder 1, the intake was 8 thousandths on the left cam, 8 thousandths on the right cam. In metric, that's 0.203 millimeters. That was on the exhaust on that one. On the intake, it was 0.0028 on both intake cams. That's 0.07 millimeters. And then on cylinder 2, it was 0.06, 0.05 inches on the exhaust. So those, I believe both of those are in spec. We'll look at that in a minute. But on the intake, I had no clearance at all. I couldn't even fit a 1/1000th feeler gauge under the intake for this cylinder. So, I mean, if I can't fit anything under it, it's colliding. And that would make sense because, like I said, this bike has been, if it sits for a while, it has a hard time starting. So if it's running into the valve, then that would explain my problem. So now I got another piece of cardboard over here. I'm going to write the nominal values, and then we will talk about what I think I need to order to fix this. Like, these are still, these are both out, but just by a little bit. These are in. I don't think I'm going to have to do anything to this one. I might change the shim on this one, but I'm going to have to order different shims for this. For sure. And definitely for this. And this sucks because I'm totally guessing. Like, I don't know what it needs because I don't know how far it's out. I can't measure it. So let me write down the nominal values and I'll bring you back. Alright, it's going to take me a minute to figure out where I was at. Like, right after I turned the camera off last time, there was some kid crashed down there. Like, the car, I think the car was coming by when I was turning the camera off, and as soon as I turned it off, I heard skirt, 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 pow. So I ran down there and make sure he was okay. And he had a buddy come pull him out, so I'm back now.